I've made a video game. It's basically Pong, but with explosions. No, really, that's what I called it. That's the name. Let's talk game design. The GMTK Game Jam wrapped up recently and I managed to somehow find 10 minutes to throw something together and enter. The theme was countdown, so me being me, I thought about the most obvious choice for countdowns, stuff about to blow up. At first I thought about making a bomb defusal game, and then something like the criminally underrated N64 classic Blast Corps, where you drive a slowly detonating truck to explode a building. And then 57 other things before I realised time itself was thematically also a countdown and I did actually need to make something. So finally, I concluded what could possibly be simpler than... Now I know what you're thinking. Is this rambling old man really going to spend a significant chunk of time in a video analysing and explaining the game design of Pong? Yes. Yes I am. Pong is probably the first commercially successful video game ever made, to the point that when Atari installed their first machine in a public bar, they received a phone call from the owner saying that it had broken, but what had actually happened is there were so many quarters inside that the coin mechanism had jammed. It was literally too popular to keep functioning. On a completely unrelated note, please subscribe to my channel. The first thing you'll notice about Pong is literally all of Pong. Take one look at it and you understand it. 2 paddles, 1 ball, backwards and forwards, keep hitting it, do it more than the other guy, job done. No tutorial, no manual with the controls in, no deep dive video about the subtleties of high level pro tier strategy, and no having to learn what wave dashing is. Other than that, there's only really a couple of things to talk about. The first one is... possibly the most overlooked aspect of Pong is that the ball moves based on where it connects with your paddle. So you have a deterministic and predictable level of control over what is, let's be honest, the only actual gameplay mechanic in the game. The angles involved can, if you're good enough, all be predicted and capitalised on for your own success. So if I'm going to remake Pong, I need to make sure that that's included. If a game only has one mechanic, then I really do need to get that right. Spoilers, viewer. Of course I did. I'm good at what I do. Determinism is incredibly important because it leads to the other defining factor of Pong, especially in the context of today's game design trends. The thing with Pong is that you're both on a very level and even playing field. You both have the same movement speeds, the same angle bouncing positions and abilities. You're not in a complex game with overpowered loadouts or premium attacks or something. You're both just given the same paddle on either side. This also might not sound like much, but combined with the determinism, it means that the only difference between you and your opponent is, in fact, skill. You can see from this why it did so well in a bar environment where you'd get things like pool or darts or air hockey. Competitive analog games where again, the only difference is skill. And that's about it for Pong. It is Pong. You know Pong, you're looking at Pong, you understand Pong. I'm going to say Pong again. Pong. So if we're remaking Pong, we'll start with... something that I absolutely have to get right because it's literally the only thing that you can do. Your movement needs to be deterministic, but it also needs to feel good. So the paddle moves with a subtle degree of acceleration and deceleration, making it feel just a little bit smoother. This is something underrated in a lot of game design because the entire point is that you're not really supposed to notice. And you are only going to notice if it's wrong. For the time I did have available, I spent about 50% of it tweaking the movement variables because, of course I did. We can add into that the ball's movement, which starts off at a readable and predictable speed to build up familiarity and introduce determinism. But then with each bounce, advances just a little bit on yet another variable that I tweaked obsessively that you won't even notice because nobody ever does. But trust me, it's exactly correct. Just take my word for it. So we've got a paddle, which is 50% of Pong, and now we need the other half. We need... The game plays at a resolution of 1280 by 720, so the balls need to be a reasonable size. They also need identical behaviour, so that they all bounce and rebound in the same way in every instance, which is in line with the deterministic design of the original. We can then finally actually get to the theme of the game jam, countdown. You'll notice every ball has a number above it, and every time that ball bounces, the number goes down. When that number reaches 0, the ball explodes. Hence, Pong, but with explosions. But why explosions?
Because it's cool.
But also because it's how we're going to twist the original game's gameplay loop to something slightly different. See, the goal of our game is not to just get the ball past your opponent to score a point. No, because it's 2026. What we're aiming to do now is kill them by blowing stuff up. When the ball explodes, it creates an invisible explosion radius object behind it that, on contact with either paddle, will subtract 20 HP from their health bar. Yes, we've added a health bar. Once that hits 0, whichever side it is loses. An added level of complexity, but still very readable and immediately understandable, which is in line with the original game. Also in keeping with the mechanics of the original, the ball will also explode if it's allowed to go past a paddle and leave either side of the screen, which means the same basic gameplay is still there all of the time, but reinterpreted in a different way. Again, specifically, with explosions. If you've been paying attention, you might also have noticed that there's more than one ball at once. The reason for this is that arcade games released after Pong began and expanded upon something that I call organic escalation, where it's not just the difficulty but also the complexity and franticness of the game that would increase at what was still often a deterministic pace. A good example is Space Invaders, where the aliens would just naturally get faster based on there being less of them available. Remember, the theme of the jam is countdown, so the entire time the game is active you've got a countdown showing when the next ball is going to spawn. What's clever about this, because I'm brilliant, is that every time a ball is allowed to explode, the countdown gets shorter by 0.1 seconds, which means that balls spawn faster and you'll end up with more balls in play organically over time. Speaking of countdown, we also have... If you've got a health bar and the whole point is to not die, it's a good idea to have a way to replenish your health. For this we have another countdown for a health pickup. Every time a ball explodes, it subtracts 1 from the health pickup counter, and on 0, a health pickup is spawned that when collected will restore 10 hit points. Nice and simple. To keep with the philosophy and values of the original, the health spawning is also deterministic. The first one spawns in the direction towards the player, the second towards the AI, the third back towards the player, and so on. Oh right, the AI. Now, Pong is a multiplayer game, but this is a game jam, and I doubt every person entering has the ability to pull someone in and be like, hey, come and play Pong with me for 5 minutes. So we're going to need... This is the hardest part of designing a Pong replacement because you're going to have to try and simulate a real person. And real people are complex, complicated, and not very deterministic. Well, most of them, but this isn't the time for a sociology rant. We've got more important things to do. The AI paddle is built on a very simple list of priorities. It'll prioritize health pickups first, then avoiding any ball whose explosion counter is set to 1, and then returning anything else, much like a relatively skilled player might do. But because we're trying to simulate a human, it's not perfect. By design, sometimes it'll just not do that and will inevitably make mistakes like a real human opponent would. Otherwise this would be like taking on the Terminator in table tennis. What's also important is that it has exactly the same movement and acceleration speeds as you do, which brings us back to what we mentioned about having a level playing field. AI is never a perfect recreation of a human, but this is as close as I could get in the 30 seconds I had to actually make the thing, so it's not a bad approximation. And for the most part, that's it. There's not much more I can tell you about Pong that you can't already see and feel whenever you play it, so go and play it. There is, however, just one more thing. The GMTK Game Jam has a category for entries called narrative, but this is Pong. You see the problem. So rather than getting dramatically overscoped with a visual novel dating sim about a paddle trying to get a ball to fall in love with him, I decided on a very simple little intro text screen. A child speaks to their father. "My era is beyond yours, old man. You have no place, no skills anymore." The father smiles. "Your confidence is admirable, your arrogance misplaced. My skills transfer in ways you cannot comprehend." The child is incredulous. "Prove it." And so the father loads a game. The entire game of silly explosive Pong now has a narrative context, of a child challenging their father's skills. Which is, if you think about it, basically the point of remaking Pong. It's seeing what framework and mechanics from something as old as Pong can translate still to the modern era, and how the foundations of what game design was can still live on today. And I don't know, I kinda like that. And if you've liked this video, then be sure to like the video that you liked since you liked it, and subscribe for more videos like the video you liked because you liked it, and I will see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.